Many thanks for the invitation, and many thanks for giving Hydrogen Europe and myself the opportunity to present to you the European hydrogen roadmap towards a CO2-neutral Europe and a secure energy supply. And it's my pleasure to be the first speaker at this event. I have seen the list, the lineup of speakers is really excellent, top-notch speakers, not only from Germany, but also from Germany, which is one of the leading hydrogen countries still. It depends a little bit whether we are pursuing, so to say, the roadmap that has been done for us. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you a few things about the European context. Germany is embedded in this European context. Myself, I have the role of a CEO at Hydrogen Europe. It's the 7th year now, 7.5 years. When I started, I was the first employee of Hydrogen Europe. Today, we are a team of 50. The association as such has approximately 500 members, out of which most of them are corporates, but also regions are members and national associations. I would like to explain a little bit where we are at the moment with regards to the hydrogen agenda. Would like to give you some updates. And before I start with my first slide, I would like to say we are not bad as Europeans, because we were the first region to have a legal framework, to prepare a legal framework to become zero climate neutral and net zero in 2050. And that's a big achievement. And also we were among the first to come up with a hydrogen strategy already in 2020. But what has happened since then? Because 2023 is 3 years later. Yes, we had a hydrogen strategy that was somehow triggered by COVID. And we all remember supply chains were interrupted, the world market, the international trade system was a little bit reshaped. And then the invasion of Russia into Ukraine caused, like a catapult, caused a much bigger importance of hydrogen because of the replacement strategy with vis-a-vis natural gas and other fossil elements. Now, what has happened since then? This is my first slide that shows you the result. So the house of hydrogen is being built, the result of the Renewable Energy Directive in combination with the so-called delegated acts. I possibly start with those delegated acts because everybody in Europe and worldwide is talking about the European definition of green or clean hydrogen. And that basically is connected to the Renewable Energy Directive, the third recast, and we are about to have it issued by the European Parliament, the member states, on behalf of the European legislators. It was initiated by the Commission. And within this Renewable Energy Directive, what is renewable is defined. And that's the delegated act that will most probably be presented in its final version 14th of June, so not far away from now. And it took some 3 years to come up with this definition. So what does the definition say? And then what does the Renewable Energy Directive say? The definition says that we want to be complicated in Europe, as we are normally complicated. It says that in order to prove that the electricity you take from grid is renewable, you need to take care of certain things. You need to take care that the sources of this renewable energy are additional, so are not old. They need to be younger than 36 months. And as of 2030, if things go wrong and if things stay as they are at the moment, and I will explain later on why we might see a change here, then you need to prove every hour where the electricity comes from. That's something which other geographies most probably will not follow, because we understand as a hydrogen sector that it's very, very important to have additional renewable energy sources and to build them up. And as hydrogen, we understand that we will be the first and only at the moment to prove that we take electricity from additional sources. The hourly requirement, by the way, is not needed. You can do it on a monthly basis. You can do it on a quarterly basis, even on a yearly basis, in order to show we are ramping up and we are not cannibalizing electricity that could also be used for heat pumps and batteries. But that's where I would say this idea comes from, because batteries and heat pumps need electricity, and electricity is very, very difficult to import. Hydrogen is easier to import. And that is why this idea to force the hydrogen sector to prove the additionality was understandable, but the technical requirement just adds cost. This is something we tend to see in the European Union, that on one hand, we want to be first when it comes to hydrogen. On the other hand, yes, we put ourselves, some say it's ideological, a burden. I would say it's just a fight of interest. So the electricity world had the interest to keep the hydrogen sector somehow limited, understandable, but for the competitiveness of Europe, wrong. Now, we might get rid of the hourly for hydrogen as a feedstock. And now I would like to share with you, so to say, the result of the Renewable Energy Directive, because it says that there will be obligatory targets to use hydrogen in certain fields, in certain sectors. There is the industry, and the industry, to give you a concrete example, chemical industry, petrochemical, steel industry, fertilizer industry, which could be summarized as chemical, they all need, as of 2030, to replace gray hydrogen, so the traditional methane-based hydrogen, by green hydrogen, by 42%. That's quite a chunk, and that's quite a big volume that needs to be produced there. But that's good, because this obligation needs to be checked by the member states in every single member state that has these industries. Also, we have smaller volumes that need to be green and greened for the transport sector, for the heating sector, for the maritime, and for the aviation sector. We have there concrete targets that need to be followed. In steel, steel companies that go into the direction of direct reduction of iron ore, so and you have Niels Aldag in your program, one of the masters of this technology. This means that the steel companies could also replace coal by hydrogen, and all in all, this here makes up some round about 6 million tons per year. So 6 million tons until 2030 need to be produced on an obligatory basis. That's good. That's a good start. It's not the 20 million tons that you might have heard with regards to the Repower EU program. Repower EU was built up right after the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. And there, the EU said 10 million tons need to be produced in Europe and 10 million tons need to be imported. And that's a big number. But the 6 million tons are a good start as an obligatory basis. Just let me remind you that 10 days ago, a big company, NEOM, the NEOM project, announced the financial closure of the project. And it will, after all the signatures are there, it will produce 600 tons per day as of end 26. So it's not even 3 years. 3 years time to 600 tons per day. So you have an idea of the dimension that we are expecting. How do we go? How are we going to get there? And here I want to say that next to the Renewable Energy Directive and other parts of the so-called Fit for 55 package, big package to combine the Green Deal with the answers we need to give after the war in Ukraine, the Commission came up with on a very same day with 3 elements. One was the Net Zero Industry Act, which is the first time a real coherent industrial policy approach in Europe, because so far industrial policy was seen not out of the eyes of France. France has this planification, has this industrial approach. Historically, always they had that. Europe was a little bit undecided to go into that direction. Now we have it. And this was combined with a Critical Raw Materials Act that I will refer to in a second. And the very same day, the Hydrogen Bank was communicated or announced. And that's super important for our sector because we now, our technologies, electrolyzers, fuel cells, other technologies that we need, CCS, have been put in the Net Zero Industry Act into the basket of the strategic technologies. And this is important because these technologies will now get money, Hydrogen Bank, so to say, for our technologies, and they will get faster permission processes. And this, everybody can understand that, is super important in order to keep our continent, to keep our economy competitive, because the rest of the world is not sleeping. After Europe came up with a hydrogen strategy, I have sometimes the impression all the others woke up. Korea and Japan were already quite advanced, but the rest of the world, be it the United States of America with the IRA, or Canada, be it Australia, be it the whole MENA region. I just referred to the NEOM project, which is in the north of Saudi Arabia. The world is going into that hydrogen direction. If you want to stay competitive, you need to have this approach, and you need to have a mechanism to finance or to fund at least the gap, to de-risk the gap that you have when it comes to costs, additional costs referred to fossil costs. And this is why we were so happy to see this cake with this cherry on top of the cake, the Hydrogen Bank. And by the way, last week, the Hydrogen Bank got a little bit more of shape when Robert Habeck, the German minister, and Mrs. Simpson, the energy commissioner of the EU, met in Salzgitter to do what? To discuss how H2 Global, the German scheme for international ramp-up of hydrogen production, and the Hydrogen Bank can be combined. In a nutshell, the Hydrogen Bank has so far 5.8 billion euro with the German money and with the European money, and there will be more to come. Let me talk a little bit about the Critical Raw Materials Act, because this is also an integral part of this package. And here we understand that if we want to go for clean tech, which we need to become net zero, climate net zero in 2050, we also need to manage the access and the use of critical raw materials. And I have very, very good news. The hydrogen sector needs much less of critical raw materials. Give you one example. We launched the hydrogen car of BMW, the X5, quite recently. And very concretely, the same car exists with a battery only. And the hydrogen car needs only 10% of the critical raw material because the battery is much smaller. If you go for the charging infrastructure, it's even less. You need 5% of the critical raw material for the whole charging infrastructure. So you see that the energy efficiency, always used as an argument against hydrogen, is super important, but a small part if you see the system efficiency, having the costs, having the importation capacity, having the critical raw materials in mind. And this is why we believe that Europe can only be competitive if the doors for more hydrogen and also the strategic look upon hydrogen, the geostrategic look, is more open. The doors need to be more open, and some ideas that people have about hydrogen, it's the champagne of the energy transition, remind me what people said 20 years ago about solar. It was too expensive. No, hydrogen will ramp up. The costs will go down. The real question is whether the Europeans can keep their instruments, so the delegated acts, the definitions, as simple as possible in order to keep also the price down and not artificially to bring the price up. I would like to thank you. I believe that sitting there at this important conference, you grasp the importance, the historical importance of the hydrogen sector and the different hydrogen technologies. We will continue to fight for a better understanding of this technology, because it's crucial for the ramp up. It's crucial for our goals and targets politically, but also economically. Many thanks, and it was an honor to speak to you.